I wasn't really sure if you did interviews because I know it's that like keeping the identity private while still, getting out there a bit. So I wasn't sure how many interviews and whatever you did. So I was stoked you wanted to come do it, man.
Oh, yeah. It's actually very interesting because I've been like the first masked artist that are on a lot of these podcasts and interviews like this.
Right.
But I'm very like a personable sort of guy. And I enjoy talking. And the mask is just a brand identity. I'm actually just a really goofy dude. So,
well, that's good. I mean, I would love to talk to you about all this. The mask thing in general. I will say this is not a knock on you, but you are the second masked person I've had on this podcast. It's actually funny. I was thinking about this before you got on. I've had in total 5 DJs who wear masks, but only one who actually wore the mask while we did the podcast before you. So
nice.
Well, how are you doing, man? How are you feeling?
I'm doing good. I just did 20 shows in 42 days.
That's a lot.
Just got home last night. I guess it's like 50 days. But yeah, I got home last night, left my iPad on the Delta airplane.
Oh, no.
I was helping this old lady get her, like, she was very old. When I say old, like 85 probably, helping her get her bag down. And I put my iPad on her seat and then walked like behind her because she was like struggling a little bit. And then once I got off the plane, went to baggage claim, I was like, yep, I left my iPad.
I've been there. Are you going to even try to get it back? Do you think there's any chance?
Well, I filed a report with Delta, but then I tracked it this morning and it's at someone's house, like an hour away.
That's tough. That's, I was listening to a podcast the other day and a guy was telling a story that happened to his AirPods, and the same thing happened where like he saw they were at some house close to the airport, and I guess he was staying there for another day or two, and he went on this crazy like commando mission to like 3 different locations, following it around, and finally through some combination of intimidation and police calls and stuff got it back. But I don't know, man. Sometimes I think that's not even worth it.
Yeah, I might just write it off as a loss. We'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you, man. Can I ask you about the mask itself? I really like nerding out about that kind of thing. How custom is that mask? And like how many variations have you gone through at this point?
So I have 5 different masks. They're all about the same. They're from the same designer. His name is Ivan King. He lives in Italy. He makes molds of like 30 different versions of this mask. He claims everyone's like a one of one because he hand makes them.
Okay.
So somewhere out there, you could probably get your hands on something very similar to mine. But the whole eye mesh thing, that's all me.
Okay.
Because it looks really weird without this. It looks like like terrifying.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Like I got these like blue-green eyes. So like when you look into it, it just like, ooh, it's kind of like that 1,000-yard stare. It's just not right.
Yeah, it's more that's more of like a murderer vibe at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's funny because I was talking to Barely Alive about the like microwave like helmet thing he wears. And he was telling me about how many versions of it he went through just to make it feasible to perform in. Because I think he had the concept before he really tried taking it on the road and DJing and jumping around in a hot club. Have you had to make any of those kinds of adjustments for comfort's sake?
I've tried so many adjustments. I've tried like even like putting a microphone right inside the jawline.
Right.
But it didn't work in the way that I wanted it to. Like the clarity was there. It was kind of like a lapel mic that you would see like performers use like when they're dancing.
Right. And
the clarity was there, but people really started enjoying me putting the microphone to my eye. Like I'd do like this.
That
was like a thing that grew with the whole crowd. It was always a comment and people just love it.
Yeah, I like that, man. You got to lean into the quirks of your own particular thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The whole mask thing is funny. Did you get like a any kind of reaction you had to sort of battle against from like the UK drum and bass guys when you first came out? Because I feel like I don't think this is quite as much in the modern era as it used to be, but it used to be the UK drum and bass scene kind of looked at the US scene as like the little brother, like a less serious version of what they did. And then if you add a mask to that, I feel like the judgment could be even stronger.
Yeah, I definitely think like there was resistance there. And the mask thing made me feel like almost like disingenuous,
Right.
like a phony almost. And I'm still known as like the American drum and bass guy just because of the music that I make and the style and the tonality of everything. But after a few years, it just grew on everyone. That was part of the barrier where I had to like push through with, the UK promoters because they had to have the faith to actually book me. And finally, when they did, it's worked out.
Yeah. I mean, that's so cool, man. How have you gotten to go over there a fair amount at this point?
Yeah, so last year I did 19 countries, and I ended my Europe tour in October with UK and Bristol.
Nice,
and,
man.
Yeah, I think the UK show, I think they might have called it a technical sold out or sellout, but it was more like probably 20 tickets from max capacity.
Nice. I mean, that's huge, man. Yeah, and it's interesting to think about now that American drum and bass has a head of steam behind it a little bit. It's funny to think about UK audiences getting excited for, a new take on something that they've had kind of the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right. Now that you say that, I think your style, there's something maybe uniquely American about it. It's a little, or at least there's something non-UK about it. Like I could hear maybe echoes of, I don't know, somebody like Pendulum in what you do. Like there's a bit more of a
100%.
rock edge. But yeah, that's less of a UK thing.
Yeah, and like I've even done a lot of like, I've done BBC One guest mixes, Cool FM guest mixes, and you always have a split crowd there. Because some people are like, oh, you're adulterating drum and bass. And then other people are like, oh, you're the new life of drum and bass.
But you know what's funny, man? I was listening to a lot of your music as a refresher, getting ready to talk to you. And there's something about your style, which I think you do have a pretty identifiable style in your music. But there's something about it that made me kind of reminded of drum and bass I loved as a kid because there's something unique about it. I think it is just that identifiable thing that I could instantly connect to across all of your projects and your songs. Like, I don't know, it reminded me, not sonically, but the way I reacted to it of like old like Dillinger records where like there was a period in time where everything Dillinger was putting out sounded so... It was fresh, but it also sounded so much like him and nobody else sounded like him. And to me, I feel like a lot of your records have kind of that same quality, even though it's not the same style, Yeah,
fresh, familiar, and unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, how much of that do you think about in terms of your writing? Because I think your music is really cohesive, and I'm always curious from like a nerdy standpoint when you're sitting down to write a song, how much are you thinking about how does this fit into what I've already done?
So I usually sit down and I focus on the song portion first. I want to write a song, and even like a lot of the lyricists that I work with, I'm building out the song into this like digestible and like important piece of music. And then I go into like a sound design session, and then I slowly start mixing everything down, which most of my mixes, they're either passable or pretty good, but I intentionally blow everything out. It's meant to feel like, almost like rock music. And I think that's what gives it a certain like edge of that freshness.
I mean, do you have like a songwriting background? Like what does your musical background look like? Because another thing I noticed listening to a bunch of your songs in a row is that while there is that rock edge and a lot of the music is very explosive, there's often like real songwriting going on underneath it. And it's not, I think the problem I have with a lot of modern bass music or just heavy music in general is that it's oftentimes like you can tell they wrote the drop first and then just kind of wrote some stuff later to get them to that drop, which to me is not really that fun of a way to listen to a song. like what is your musical background? Because I feel like there must be some real, I don't know, lessons, instruments, something back there.
Yeah, I know bass guitar, keys, drums, and I love writing lyrics and singing as well. Almost every pre-drop you hear in my songs is also me, but that's just like a small snippet of the actual work. But my focus has always been the actual song. And I've done a lot of ghost production work. I've been contracted for ghost production work and music for movies. If you dig deep enough, I'm sure you can find it. But yeah, I usually don't go back into all the credits that I've done. But it's definitely influenced my work to this day, just because it gave me experience as a songwriter. And it's also my passion to, write something that you can sing along to, write something that can like really attach to you for more than just a few weeks.
And with all of these questions, none of these are gotcha questions. We don't have to give any details away that you don't want to give. But before the Reaper project, were you doing a lot of that kind of work, like ghost production, writing for other people, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was doing all sorts of that work.
It's interesting. I mean, was that your path into the industry?
I kind of developed my way into the industry just from consistently making music and consistently sending music to people. That's the easiest way to put it.
That makes sense. And I mean, did you, I guess what I'm asking is like the Reaper project seems so firm of a concept. And I can tell from like, I read some old interviews, that sort of thing. Like it seems like you have a very strong idea of what you want this project to look like, to feel like, and that you've sort of had that from day one, which makes me think that either you've been watching and observing other people doing that for a long time, or that you have some experience doing it yourself for other projects that, now you can approach this one with kind of the knowledge of how to do everything properly. Would that be correct?
Yeah, once the idea was conceived, which it was also kind of a collaboration with my manager, who I was living with at the time. And we sat on the music, the brand identity, all of our purpose for 2 years. We waited and waited and waited until everything, it's like we were like building up a nest almost. And then we launched and just went full force from there. And that was like end of 2018 when we really just hit the ground running. And it's been all gas, no brakes since then.
In that time, I'm always curious, like when you've come up with the concept and you've stockpiled some work and, like you said, you waited until the time was right, you felt ready. What have you had to adjust since then from the original plan?
It's been a constant adaptation. I think one of the specialties of my team and I has been just keeping our ear to the ground nonstop. And understanding the fans better, understanding, what the market's looking like which markets do we need to push harder in to teach them how to love drum and bass, which markets have we already performed well in, that sort of thing. And that goes for both, physical shows and also like the online community. And I think one thing that changed over time is my voice online became a little bit more personal. It started as kind of just like a goofy character. Actually, maybe it started a little cryptic in the very beginning, but we evolved into something that people could actually feel was like real. You can go out there and, touch this guy. He's a real person.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think there's something, I love that kind of thing because ever since I was a kid, I love peeking behind the curtain. I love seeing how a show is put on. And there's something about, it's like one of my favorite ideas I talk about all the time. There's something about taking silliness seriously that I think is like, that's, if you can really nail that sweet spot, that's like the key to making people interested in what you do. It's the key to like keeping it fun for yourself. And so I kind of like that that's where it's ended up for you, because, you know, I mean, as, not to get too deep with it, but it's like, as humans, I mean, there's such a long history of mask wearing and ritual, like performative rituals and theater. I mean, it goes back to like the earliest civilizations, but then, you know, it's also in the modern era to like just put on a mask as an adult and play crazy drum and bass music. It's also a silly thing to do. And I love that both can exist at the same time. It's just, that makes me happy.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, it's definitely more, it caters to myself personally, but also the mask and the beanie and the bulletproof vest and everything looks scary. But then you see me jumping around on stage and I say ridiculous things on the mic and I'm just having fun. I think it's like this ironic creativity where I'm teaching people to take themselves a little less seriously and just let loose.
Yeah, oh, dude, 100%. Yeah. I love that kind of stuff too. I feel like you may have some background in like rock or metal. Would that be right? Were you like a rock kid early on?
I was always into that. And I was in a few different failed bands. But still to this day, I've actually been going back on like a Nickelback kick. Like Nickelback and
interesting.
Saliva.
Like unironic Nickelback?
Yes.
Wow. I respect that.
I'm telling my friends on tour, I'm like, they're actually not that bad. it's pretty good.
Oh man, that's an uphill battle, my friend.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that's the best thing I've heard all day is unironic Nickelback. I brought it up because just last night I've been getting back into. I was like a metal kid when I grew up, and I've been getting back into like some black metal and death metal and like little, like the more extreme styles of metal. I went to a show last night. It's like a tiny band. It's like 100 people in a dive bar, but they're playing extremely technical music. They're incredible musicians. And it's all, they're wearing like wizard cloaks, and you know, there's like a giant sword on stage. The whole thing is extremely performative. All the songs are about, you know, dragons and sorcery and all that. And then the same thing after the show, I went up because they were just chilling. I just went up to tell them it was a great show, and I was like, "Where are you guys out of?" And there was two of them standing there, and the one guy was like, "Oh, we're from Charlotte." And I was like, "Oh, cool, Charlotte." And then the other guy was like, "No, dude, you got to stop saying that. We tell people we're from Mordor. We have to be consistent." And it was just the funniest. It's exactly what we're talking about, where I was like, "Oh, yeah, man, you can tell me you're from Mordor. That's cool. We don't have to talk about Charlotte."
Yeah, funny enough, a tangent on that. I used to get messages all the time about where I was from, and I don't really give out that information. So people would just guess, like, "Oh, you're from Australia." And I'd be like, "Yep, definitely from Australia."
Yeah, you got to have fun with it, man. Because as long as your audience is in on the fact that like we're all kind of pretending and we're all, you know, living in this fun little fantasy, I think there's nothing better than that for me.
Yeah, exactly. It brings you a little comfort. You're just having a little fun time.
Dude, absolutely. I mean, I'm sensing as we talk, we may be similarly minded about this, but I've always been a bit of an escapist as far as like loving to get absorbed in fantasy world, sci-fi. You know, I read books as a kid and would just like spend, you know, all day like falling into some crazy little world. Lately, it's been video game, you know, expansive video games, that kind of thing. Were you that kind of kid?
100%. I was obsessed with video games. I haven't had a lot of time to play over the past like 3 years, which has been a little sad. I still play like Call of Duty online with friends, but it's more of a social activity. I can't really keep up with their skill level.
Yeah.
But I probably played through Oblivion and Skyrim maybe like 20 times each.
Nice.
It's like like that sort of thing. Also all the Fallout games.
Oh man, yeah. Did you start watching the series that just came out?
All of my friends have, and I've been on the road. I've had like one day at home in the past 10 days, and I have not started it yet.
Yeah,
I really want
haven't
to,
seen
though.
it yet either, but I'm stoked for that.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to someone at the airport yesterday about it, and apparently it's more based on the setting of Fallout, and there's no like adaptation of the actual stories that go on because they're developing a new story about it.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a different vault located in like, I think, Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I think that's why maybe it's so successful right now, because they're not trying to continue any story that's going on. They're just building off of character themes and setting themes.
It's probably smart, yeah, because it's really hard, I think, when like a video game or a book or whatever gets adapted, it's very hard to not just do the fan service thing and just try to include all the characters that everybody already likes. I think it's always diminishing returns with that, because most people who are already super fans of the property are going to be too smart to be sort of taken in by just like, oh, it's the same guy from the thing. And then, but then if you lose them by going too hard into like the fan service, then you can't get new people on board. So I think that's probably smart on their part.
Yeah, definitely. Like, did you watch the Amazon adaptation of Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
TV show?
Yeah.
How'd you feel about that?
It was okay. It wasn't, I didn't think it was terrible, but I also was like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and I just thought it was okay.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted the same nostalgia, the same connection I had with all the original characters. And that's really where it lost me. I've seen Lord of the Rings all the way through probably 30 times.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my go-to on tour. And once I watched that, it was like every episode, felt like this little bit of disappointment or a little bit of blue balls. I was like, I wanted something just like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they definitely didn't nail it. It's hard to do, man. But I think that other setting is probably the way. I mean, what was when you were a kid? Was it video games first? What's like? Do you have early memories of really being transported that way?
There was definitely a lot of video games that influenced how I grew up. I was really big into Super Smash Bros. Actually.
Oh yeah, I went through a long period for that one too.
Mm-hmm. So there wasn't like any lore to that, except for I was being introduced to characters that I didn't even know before. So then I'd go back out and I'd like buy that game on N64 or GameCube or whatever it may be, and get to play that game and get to learn something a little bit new. And then that was like my new favorite character in Super Smash Bros. For the week.
Right. That's fun. And I mean, Super Smash Brothers that's a highly technical game for as cartoony as it is. And you were talking about Call of Duty or something a second ago, which I think, again, is like a skills-based game. And if those games you were gravitating towards too, I think there's got to be a connection between that and some of the nerdier parts of like music production as well.
Yeah, I can see that. There's actually a lot that I relate to video games and production, and also cooking. There's kind of like this like three-way.
Yeah.
Everything has like a little recipe. Once you learn it, you like know the techniques that work really well, and then you give yourself a little bit of room for expansion and learning extra skills, collaborating with yourself a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think I was just talking about this idea, but like cooking, it's like once you know the recipe and you can replicate it, consistently, that's when you can start experimenting, and that's when you can start breaking the rules. And, it's tempting when you first start off to try to break the rules immediately, like kind of before you even know the rules, where you're just like, I'm going to make the craziest thing imaginable. But it's hard to do that when you don't know how to like make the original thing first, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely true. I feel like for certain recipes, once I know like where the region of the dish comes from, or let's say once I've done it more than a couple times, if I go on a tangent or go somewhere relative and make another dish from that same country or that same region, I can pretty much just wing it right there, because I'm like, I know what my foundation is. I know how it works. And honestly, it's the same exact thing with sound design and sound engineering, which has always been amusing to me because I'll do my sound design sessions and it feels like I'm kind of cooking a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
A little bit of spice. A little bit of spice.
Let that boy cook. That's all I'm saying, man. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's the same thing. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's interesting. I'm still thinking about what you were saying earlier, that your engineering of the songs is part of what makes your project stand out. I hadn't thought too much about that before, but I think you're right, man. It is that little spice. Another thing I think it is too, I'm just going off on a tangent real quick, but you've already put out a couple albums in this project, which is a fairly new project still in like the grand scheme of everything. Was that the idea from the start, to have it be not an album-based project, but like that was going to be a big part of how you'd release music?
So I put out a handful of EPs. I put out almost 10 bootlegs, a couple singles, a couple collabs, and then album number one was meant to be. It's not a concept album, but I was like, I want to put out like a full body of work, something that's going to take a little bit longer to digest, something for me to kind of obsess over for a little bit. And then album number two was meant to be a concept album, which that's Challenger right here. But last year with my leg injury that I had, like writing, working was extremely difficult. So it kind of shifted gears a little bit. There's still a concept around it, but it only ended up being like 7 tracks. And 7 tracks doesn't get you too far album-wise.
I mean, you can call anything an album, you know?
Yeah, you can call anything an album. But I will say it's not the end of Challenger.
I got you. So you had the idea for the Challenger album, you were working on it, and then you had that injury? Is that the order of events?
The injury developed and like it progressed into a more like, I guess, painful state.
What happened there? What is that story?
So I actually had a pretty awful fall off of the stage. Not a fall. I jumped.
Oh, yeah.
I jumped, and it was way too tall. And I'm not going to say where, but I walked it off, and the pain came and went for months and months and months. And every doctor told me it was sciatica. And then I finally went to an orthopedic surgeon, and they're like, you have an acute fracture, and your femur is dying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I had a total hip replacement in December of last year.
That was really fun. I have a friend who had one of those last year, and yeah, it's a big procedure.
Mine actually went really, really well. I walked out of surgery.
Nice.
It was kind of fun, I gotta say.
Like, how was it fun?
My surgical team was just so incredible, and I walked into the hospital at like 4:50 in the morning, and they're like, "How you doing?" And I was like, "Man, I just want a mimosa so bad right now." And they're like, "Don't worry, we'll take care of you." And so each little cocktail of pharmaceutical drugs they gave me, they're like, "This is a mimosa. Here's your margarita.
Right.
Here's your poinsettia, and we're gonna top you off with an old fashioned." And I was like, "Hell yeah, let's go."
That's great, man. Well, hip replacement, which I now know from talking to my friend who had one, seems like if you're going to have a joint replaced, that's the one you want.
100%, yeah. It is like the most researched joint replacement in the world. The surgeries are like 99% effective. There's almost no complications. And in a lot of cases now, like the technology is very advanced. I even had like robots working on me during the surgery.
Really? Doing what?
Mainly like nerve repair. And so it's like something that insurance won't cover, but it's a little bit of an advanced procedure where they can like help repair nerves and like small tissues, stuff that doctors or technicians won't really work on. But yeah, honestly, my experience was 10 out of 10, and I feel like a new person. It's pretty amazing that we have modern technology like this.
Dude, that's incredible. Yeah. That's just wild. And a good note, a good cautionary tale too, for all you kids watching videos of DJs jumping off tables every night. It's not all fun and games, kids.
Yeah, it's not all fun and games, especially when you're 6'5" and you're not used to doing it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's you got to train for that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Man. Well, and am I right? I mean, just from reading other interviews, it seems like you're generally an athletic person.
Yes, I always have been like very motivated by, especially weightlifting. I love weightlifting. It just gets the juices flowing. I get like a little bit of a high from it. And I used to play a lot of basketball as well. But last year with my injury, I had to go pretty sedentary. I could only do upper body for the most part. Most of my exercise was actually playing shows.
Yeah.
Because I could get up there. The adrenaline was flowing through me. My pain level was 0.
Was that tough, as an athletic person, as somebody who, gets a lot of value out of being active? Was it tough to not be able to be active that way?
100%. Yeah. Like on my days off, when I was either so exhausted or in so much pain, I didn't want to go to the gym or I didn't want to go for a run outside. Missing that endorphins rush throughout the day, it was definitely very mentally tough. And now I'm finally getting back into it. I've been riding a road bike. I've been lifting again. I'm building a gym at my house. It's pretty nice.
That's great, man. What did you figure out any other way to stay sane, or were you just depressed for 6 months there?
Mainly working on music and doing as much activity as I could is what kept me together. It was constant pain though, like sitting, laying, walking, everything. And one of the most depressing moments was in Tokyo. I had a week and a half there, and I was staying in Shibuya City, and I had probably 4 days off and didn't get to walk around and see much. And I would do it once a day, but it would be a challenge to go out and actually walk 4 miles there, 4 miles back. Couldn't do it. So yeah. I was cooped up in the hotel lobby or my hotel room, just working for most of the day.
Yeah, that is a bummer, man. Especially because I would imagine if your hotel room was anything like my hotel rooms have been in Tokyo, it's not that big.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm massive. I couldn't fit in the shower. I swear it was.
Yeah. Was it to the point you walk outside and just everyone starts staring at you in Tokyo?
Oh yeah. So nonstop down the street, I had people taking selfies with me. They'd be like, football player, or they'd be like, basketball, and I'd be like, yep, yes,
yeah,
that's
sure.
me. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's I'm such a just by all metrics average white guy that I never really get that anywhere. The only time I've ever gotten anything like that was there was a year period where I had the same hairstyle as Adam Levine. And once somebody asked me to sign an autograph in the airport, and they thought I was Adam Levine, and I did same thing. I just signed Adam Levine. I was like, have a good day.
You're 100%. That's
me. It's Adam Levine. Well, how did you? So okay, if you have kind of the rock background, how did you get turned on to dance music and specifically drum and bass? How did that come into your life early on?
There was all sorts of experiences that I had listening to dance music. And I also found this is very interesting. In the big room house era, 2011 to 2012 and a half.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there, those melodies were kind of the same, chugging power chord melodies of the early 2000s metal that I would listen to. And I would still just get goosebumps and I would love listening to it. And then I'd go to the arcade, or I would go downtown, go to the club. There was a teen club, and I would usually get snuck into the clubs and stuff like that too. And I just fell in love with how the music was. One time I saw it, I saw Deadmau5, and I was just sitting on a hill. I was underage, and I was like, this is something I really want to do. this makes so much sense to me. And I was already dabbling in production. I had like FL Studio 4.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I was already messing around with stuff, but I was like, this is really cool, because I was getting that euphoric moment. Of course, I'm underage. I'm like sober. I'm just getting goosebumps nonstop. And I was like, I can feel it in my bones. This is amazing.
Yes, there's something about the young live experience that I think is kind of unmatched. I mean, I was the same as you. I don't know if you stayed sober, but at least for me, like I was completely 100% sober through all of my teen years, and I was going to raves all the time, seeing incredible DJs, and it was just, it was a purely natural high, but it was a feeling I couldn't get anywhere else. And I think, honestly, I think that is kind of the spark for me.
Yeah. And I was always a weird kid when I would drive to the skate park, and I couldn't really skate, but I would just like longboard around, and I would like bomb down the parking garages. I would like take the elevator up and just go down, up and down. And I always carried this little Bluetooth speaker with me, and I'd be playing like, I don't know, Dead Mouse or Pendulum. I played, Immersion, the first Pendulum album, I think.
Oh, yeah.
2002 with watercolor on it. Yeah. I would just play that song over and over, and people are like, why are you listening to this?
Well, that was my next question. Did you have other friends who were into it, or was this kind of something you found on your own?
I found it on my own, and I had to convince a lot of my friends to get into it. And they either hated it or loved it. But thankfully, a lot of my close friends learned to love it.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's, I think, also the sign of a true DJ is when you become like the advocate and the curator for your friend group.
Yeah, I will say there was like a couple of drives that I take my friends on, and I have like adulterated the aux a little bit. The aux cable, I took it over for 4 songs in a row. I was like, I don't care if you don't like this. I'm playing this right now.
Yeah. No, that was me 100%, pretty much all the time. Is there any history of music in your family? Any like creative stuff, either from your parents or other people in your family?
I think a lot of my family was musically inclined. Everyone seems to have some sort of understanding of an instrument. No success stories where they pursued music, so I would be the first to do that. But I definitely was surrounded in like a space where music was encouraged, like listening to music, understanding music, and like when I started making music, it was very much encouraged.
Well, that's great. I mean, when did you start thinking about it as something serious for yourself, like something beyond just a hobby or a passion?
There was never like a direct moment where that was a thing. I think from the moment that I started getting obsessed with FL Studio was when I knew this is something that I wanted to do. I used to make ringtones for my little LG Roomer.
Nice.
That was like the second phone I ever had. And I found out I could plug it in and like download ringtones from FL Studio on it. So I'd make my own ringtones and edits, and I'd tell my friends in class, I'd be like, call me right now. You got to hear this.
Oh, that's
just
so
playing
sick.
on my phone.
That's so sick, man. I do kind of miss the ringtone era. There was something really fun about it. The ringtone era. I feel like this is maybe a hot take because I haven't thought this through the whole way, but I feel like the ringtone era was the last era of music that was truly janky. Like even as big as it got, it was still kind of weird and chaotic. That whole thing. Oh, yeah. There's something about the like amateurness of the ringtone era that I really miss.
Well, you know, Axel F, Crazy Frog.
Yeah, of course.
That's why the song blew up.
Dude,
Ringtones.
Oh, absolutely. I used to, my first job out of college before I started doing music full time, I was making ringtones, not composing them, but like making looping ringtones out of like record labels' catalogs. That was my job for a couple of years. And Axel F was like, yeah, I remember when that came in and they were like, hot off the presses, we got to get this uploaded to every store immediately. So funny, man. Yeah,
I'm going to butcher this story, but I watched an interview a few years ago, and it was like I think they're Scandinavian. It's a group of producers that came together and they wanted to make like an annoying ringtone. And then it sold like millions of copies. So it became like an actual musical hit too.
Dude, I mean, I like that. That's a great story because I feel like it's so rare that people come together. It's hard for anyone, I think, to sit down with the intention to write one kind of thing and just absolutely nail it. Like it's usually you sit down and you're like, I'm going to make a quiet melodic song. And then by the end, it's turned into, some other glitchy bang or whatever it is. But it's very funny to just think about like a brain trust sitting down being like, we will now make the most annoying song in the world and then actually doing it like that. I have a lot of respect for that now that I think about it.
Yeah. And that also seems to fit into like Scandinavian humor, like Dutch humor. It's like a little dry, very silly, that sort of thing.
Dutch people, and I say this with all love, Dutch people are some of my favorite people. Dutch people are so weird. And they're like some of my favorites just because that culture and that humor is some of the most, it's like beyond dry. It loops around to being wacky in like a bizarre way.
Oh, yeah. That's most of Central Europe, I feel like. Have you seen the Salvatore Ganacci videos?
Oh my God. Yeah. He's the best. He's so funny.
Yeah.
You want to talk about an athlete too. That guy, I feel like that guy, in addition to, sitting down and writing music, he's got to be going to, choreography classes.
Yeah. That guy would not break his leg if he jumped off stage.
That's right. That's exactly right. We should all be taking lessons from him. No, I love him, man. He's like, and what I like about him too is that, he'll go viral every once in a while for some crazy performance or some weird music video he puts out, but he hasn't really turned it into like a commercial brand. Like I do look at him more as like an art guy because he'll just kind of pop in, put out a song or an album, do some completely insane performances, and then just kind of go back into the void for a while. Like, again, there's something about that I really respect where it's like he's not trying to be the viral video guy. It's just he's kind of doing it because he likes being a weirdo.
Yeah, and I think he got a contract, too, with some sort of like TV network. It might have been Adult Swim or something like that. They do like the in-between little skits. And I remember I saw one, it was called like grokcore. It's graffiti parkour.
Oh, I got to look these up. I didn't know about this.
Oh, you got to look it up. Yeah, he starts the whole thing off. He's like on a phone call with his friend. And you just hear from his friend, they're like, Salvatore, it's too dangerous. Don't do it. And he's like, I finally found the formula. And then he figures out how to do graffiti parkour.
God bless him, man. I mean, he found his thing. That's the beautiful thing. He really found his thing, and he's able to do it in a way that connects with people. And I love that, man. I mean, it makes me think about like your thing too. What was it about drum and bass particularly? When did you focus in on that and figure out that was really where you wanted to apply your skills?
So the community felt so interesting and welcoming. I actually started going to weekly shows for a while. I went to a few different weeklies in a couple different cities. I won't say where. And I fell in love with it. I would go at doors and dance by myself for about an hour and a half or so. And then I got to meet everyone as they came in. I made a bunch of different friends. And that's when I realized, like, this is a sort of community that's deeply rooted in electronic music culture and something that can totally grow, or something that I could grow into. And then once I started getting into actually producing drum and bass, I fell in love with it even more deeply. And it's just the sort of thing, I guess it happened a little naturally. It was almost like there was no turning back.
It's interesting hearing you talk about this, and this is another hot take that I haven't fully thought out, so I could be totally wrong, but hearing you talk about going to those like drum and bass weeklies, and this gets into a larger conversation about how long drum and bass has been in the States, and that it's not just this new thing that, people are getting excited about now, but there's something about those, because I used to do that too. I would go, there was like Elements out in Boston, which I think is the longest running drum and bass night in the country. They've been doing every Monday for like 20, 25 years, something like that. And it's people who are really, really love and connect with drum and bass. It's like again, I could be wrong, but I'll say what I'm thinking right now, which is I think there's that direct connection to the music. People who get it, really get it, and I think follow it and become connected to it in this direct way that's maybe different from other genres in a bit. Like if I think about house music, which of course, I mean, house music was born in America and has an incredible history, but I think somebody who's into house music, often it's like about the larger scene, the larger culture. Of course, obviously it's about the music too, but I think you're right that there's something about drum and bass where the people who really ride for it, it's very simple. It's just like, this is the music for me. There's a magic here that I can see and feel. And, I want to be around other people who can see and feel it. And it's not more complicated than that. Whereas I feel like other genres sometimes can be. I don't know. I got to think about it more, but there's something to that.
Yeah, I think there is something to that. And I don't like to be a gatekeeper of any genre, but something I experienced with drum and bass that I've also found very attractive at the shows was the inclusivity. Because I would go to shows and it would be almost like half and half, men and women. There would be all sorts of different types of people, just an incredible like diversity around it. And there was even some shows too where I'd tell my friends, I'd be like, yo, I'm like the one guy here and there's like 9 blonde girls waiting out front. They just all flew in and they want to listen to some drum and bass. I'd be like, come on through. And that's how I got some of my friends into drum and bass, actually. But
yeah, that helps too.
yeah. But there's something impressive about how welcoming it is, especially because there's so many different flavors and subgenres underneath the drum and bass umbrella, where there's something for everyone. You can go spicy, you can go savory, you can go whatever.
Well, and it wasn't, at least for a long time, it wasn't trendy, right? So I think there was that understanding that anyone who was there really wanted to be there, which I think helps with that kind of welcoming attitude where, at least for a long time, no one was going there just to be cool. You know what I mean? Yeah,
exactly. They just loved it. They loved it so much.
Well, I mean, what do you think about, the modern discourse as far as what's happening with drum and bass in the States? Because obviously, I mean, it is having a surge of popularity, which is excellent. But then, I think you are seeing, at least from some of the people who have been around a little longer in the States, there's a little bit of a feeling of like, well, we have been here the whole time. This isn't a new thing. Like I always think about anytime a sound gets hot or a movement gets trendy, is there a way to make people do the research? Is there a way to be inclusive to the people who have come before and like honor and respect it? Or is it just kind of one of those timing things where like, you got to be grateful they laid the foundation and it just happens when it happens? And I don't really know.
Yeah. Well, there's a foundation of drum and bass in the US, 100%, and all of North America. And right now, the term that I like to use is it's going through a renaissance. All that's changing is now there's certain artists that are going through this process of getting the younger kids involved and teaching them how to love drum and bass in a new way. And the best way to pay respect to the people that started it all is just to continue the movement. And so there's definitely, I have seen a little resentment online because some people take credit that they have started this new drum and bass movement or whatever. But that's not the truth. It's just a renaissance. We're all artists going through this new thing, this new phase of love and popularity of drum and bass, which I think everyone should celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And, I saw that whole thing about like Subfocus and Dimension, all the worship guys. Like I saw the headline, which I think was wildly misinterpreted, that they were saying, the headline was like, they are claiming responsibility for this Renaissance in the States, which that's not what they did. And,
Yeah, it's a transcript of an interview. I think everyone needs to take that with a grain of salt.
Well, and just those guys, I mean, what they did was they were smart and they banded together and kind of like, to me, similar to some of the stuff you're talking about that you were thinking about when you started this project, where they kind of focused what they were doing for a purpose. And, because they have their own sound. And I think their sound as a collective is pretty identifiable at this point, too. And I think it works in North America as well as it works in the UK. So in that sense, to me, I'm just like, oh, they were smart. They're talented guys who came together and kind of just focused their work. That seems like smart to me.
They had a target and they had precision.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, too, because, I mean, those guys are legend. Like, I don't think, Subfocus, you can't say anything about Subfocus. That dude's been in the game forever.
He's an incredible dude. He's amazing. Actually, I think you had him on the show, right?
I did, yeah, man. It was a great convo. I still think about it sometimes.
I've listened to that episode like probably 2 times, 3 times.
Oh, nice. I mean, what I loved about that, and for anybody listening who hasn't, I would recommend it if you want to know about sort of the history of drum and bass from somebody who's still doing it, is he really went into like the early days for himself, waiting for dub plates at the record store for hours, like all the kind of early grinding, like UK history of drum and bass stuff that kind of only he can speak to. And man, it was so fun to hear him talk about
I can't imagine having to carry around crates when I travel.
Oh, dude.
Did you do
Nightmare. That? Yeah, a little bit. I never got to the point where I had to fly with crates. By the time I was flying, it was digital already. But I did for sure pack up a bunch of crates into the trunk of the car and drive them around. And it sucks, man. Like I am not one of those people who's nostalgic for the older era of vinyl. Like I sold most of my vinyl other than like the stuff you can't get digitally or stuff I have a sentimental connection to. To me, I could care. I'd be happy if I never had to buy another piece of vinyl again.
Yeah, I was just talking to Ryan Kruger in Toronto, and he was telling me about the days where you had to fly with crates, and you basically pick your 30 to 40 like vinyls, and once you fly, you can't, change the songs that you're going to play.
Yeah, that's it.
There's no stepping back. There's no changes you can make. And then every other weekend, you can maybe just switch out a few, keep your defaults for whatever tour that you're on. But that just sounds kind of exhausting. And also, you don't want to check it, too, because it might get damaged.
That's a big thing, too. And yeah. Either, and that was a whole nother calculation, was either you took a smaller number of records that you could fit into like a backpack or like a small carry-on, or if you wanted more selection for the gig, then you'd have to check it and risk the whole thing being broken. And not to mention, records are a physical medium that degrades over time. So if you go on a 3-month tour, some of your records might be unusable by the end of it if you're putting enough wear and tear on them,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
the guy with like 5 USBs and a backup of every playlist. And so having that one set, that one crate, that would just stress me out the whole entire time.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I will say, I mean, there's like I do think having sort of a sandbox, having parameters when you're doing stuff like that, it can work for you, or you can make it work for you. If you only have a smaller number of records, then you have to get more creative about how you play them, and you change the order or you mix them in different ways. Like there's ways to get around it, but I certainly don't miss those days.
Mm-hmm.
You tour pretty heavy in general. And how are you finding that? How's your live show evolved? I mean, we started off this whole conversation talking about sort of the theatrical and like presentational aspects of what you do. How's your live show evolved, and like where is it heading?
I'm constantly updating with new music. I actually freestyle all my shows. I plan out a few routines, but I'm just reading the crowd and freestyling. People think I can't see through this, but I can see everyone. So like,
how could you do it if you couldn't see? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll lock in to like someone that's like 30 rows back in the crowd, and I'll be like, what is that guy like? What is that girl like? Then I'm like, okay, that one didn't work. I'm going to go back to the sort of phrasing that I did in the last song. And I've got probably 400 songs on each playlist for each show. And I just jump around, and then I try to hit my highlight tracks. And my highlight tracks are always like, for this tour, it's Challenger tracks, of course. I play all 7 tracks on Challenger. Last tour was the same. The evolution of the show, though, has gone to heavily focus on me over the past 4 years, because I started, my first big tour was the Kazo in 2021. And I was opening, like cold opening rooms, just like doors would open probably 5 minutes into my set.
Yeah.
And it was all dubstep kids. So I had to teach them how to love drum and bass. It was like putting on a clinic every single show. Also being a little nervous, like, what if they don't like it in this city, that sort of thing. And so I learned to adapt in that sort of way. And I was playing more of like the halftime stuff, a lot of the bootlegs, the familiar bootlegs. And over the time, it's grown to be almost like a 75, 80% Reaper only sort of set. And this past tour, the past 20 dates have been incredible in that sort of sense. It's just nice being able to play my own music, and now it all mixed together because there's so much volume in the library.
Right. Yeah. And I think probably because you do have that sort of sonic cohesion in your work too, that probably makes the sets flow very nicely, I'd imagine.
It does flow nicely. I never work in the same music key. I got the whole spectrum, but I mix harmonically. So anything that I have to glue together, I just do harmonic mixing or attach some sort of the structure in the intro, outro of some sort of song. So everything flows together regardless. And I've got a few other artists that I'm friends with that have the same sort of tonality and the same sort of sonic characteristics. So I can just put those songs anywhere on my set and it works. One really great example is Rebel Scum. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I know Rebel Scum. Not personally, but I know his music.
He's a great dude, and he makes music that fits, like, I could just plug it into anywhere in my set, and it works.
It's impressive to do harmonic mixing if you're not planning out your sets in advance, man. That takes some work.
Before the set in Record Box, I do note down the key, and I've memorized like the wheel of thirds, like the Camelot key wheel, and also the actual key that it pertains to. So I've memorized it, no matter if it's no matter how I label it, I can figure out how to put it together in the set.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, it makes total sense. I'm just saying it's impressive to do that. I think a lot of DJs, maybe just younger DJs, like to mix in key, feel like they have to plan everything in advance, where what you're saying is kind of more the old school mentality of just like, as long as you know your tracks, just it's some pre-planning as far as just like getting to know every song you're bringing with you. And once you know them, it's the cooking thing again. Once you know the recipe, then you can start messing with it on the fly.
That's exactly what it is. And to be honest, it keeps me on edge a little bit while I play. Because if I plan out the whole set, it might be a little boring for me. Not boring.
And for the audience, honestly.
Yeah. And I just like to just keep everything and everyone on their toes. It's perfect that way.
Talking about freestyling your DJ sets and really reading the crowd and all of that makes me think that you must have had some early DJing experience that taught you those kind of skills. So, what was like your intro to DJing? Not the intro to producing, but the intro to DJing.
So I bought a entirely beat up, broken down pair of CDJ 2000s. I had to kind of fix them up a little bit, actually. I burned my first CDs. This was probably like 15 years ago. And I had no clue what I was doing. Also, like the waveform not loading on the CD when you have this old CD and you can't jog anywhere. That was a challenge. I was awful at DJing. But my breakthrough, funny enough, was COVID. And that's when I went full digital I got on an RX2, the XDJ RX2, and I DJ'd every single day. And like, I know I started DJing early, but I was awful. I was awful forever.
Well, were you playing out early on?
Kind
like
of.
Anywhere?
Yeah, kind of. I played a lot of different cities, but different names, different projects. For me, my true moment where I became a DJ in my eyes was when I learned to really understand the music, understand my catalog, and do the freestyle thing that I was talking about. And that's how I spent my days in COVID.
Yeah.
Like, there were some nights, like, I talk about cooking a lot in this. It's pretty much like a cooking show now. But there were some nights where I'd put on like a pot of water, start it to boil, like I'm making like tortellini or spaghetti or something. And I would just go over for 10 minutes and I would spin like 3 different routines. And I would just experiment a little bit, come back, cook. Or maybe, let's say I'm letting the meat rest for a little bit, go back 10 minutes, spin a different routine, eat my dinner, then spend like an hour and a half just learning my catalog better and learning to DJ. The digital format, especially with the XDJ having the waveforms on top of each other, have you ever noticed how convenient that is?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I used to, for many, many years, I used Serato to DJ, which has, it's the same waveform thing. And I miss it now that I don't have it. The problem I would always run into with Serato, and this, I'm not saying anything new, this was like well known, but you look at old photos of anyone DJing on Serato and they've got a Serato face, which is just like the kind of slack-jawed look of like staring at the screen the whole time. Of just like, you're in front of like a crazy crowd and you're just kind of like, just like looking at a screen. And it makes for terrible pictures and probably not great shows too. So I kind of had to get
I'm doing it right now. Can you tell?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true for you. You don't got to worry about that. Does it get hot under the mask?
Oh, yeah, dude. It gets sweaty. Also, you're breathing on yourself, so there's condensation that builds up here. This is all wet right here. But I have to disinfect it and wash it after every show just because it's sweaty, and I don't want like anything to be growing in there or anything, as gross as that sounds.
After a long tour, yeah, you gotta maintain it. It would be like a disease vector at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. But honestly, it's not too uncomfortable, and I'm really used to it. So it doesn't faze me at all anymore.
Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah. I think there is something, I mean, even like, I remember when Slipknot first came out, and, that's kind of, they have their own philosophy. It's a little different, but part of their whole thing, at least at the start, was like, they were like, yeah, it's really uncomfortable to wear these masks, but like, that's kind of what helps make the shows feel this intense, is that we're all a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can see that. I can actually relate to that a little bit. Yeah, in a way, it's more than just brand identity, but some people, it is a little bit of a trigger. Like when I walk through the crowd in the back of a club, like a small club where there's no entrance to the stage, I'm just walking through the crowd, and you see some faces that are just like, oh no. Oh no, what's about to happen?
Yeah. Well, because you're going up against, because there's plenty of examples of like very corny mass DJs in dance music's past and kind of present. And so I think, there's, for people who don't know what you do, there's probably a bit of a prejudice that you got to battle against.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, wait, I wondered this the other day. I'm glad I remembered this to ask you. Say you're playing a show tonight and you're in a city and you're at your hotel. When does the mask go on? Does the mask go on in the hotel room before you go down to get picked up by the promoter to go to the show?
So usually not, because I'm worried about like getting arrested in the hotel lobby.
Right.
Yeah. Usually it stays off. I'll have it in my bag ready to go. If it's a big club, I usually pull back in the back alleyway, go in through the back door, go straight to the green room. If it's a small club, I put the mask on in the Uber or the driver, whatever it is. Right. And I always warn them, I'm like, don't be alarmed. I'm not robbing you. And I put the mask on, and then I walk in the front.
Right.
And it honestly works well. It's comfortable. It's the sort of thing that's now a part of me.
Oh,
So
I love it, man. Just it makes me smile to think about, just those little moments of, when do you put it on? And if you haven't put it on already, is there a conversation you have to have with a promoter about like, you can never mention what my face looks like, that kind of thing?
yeah. Which I do. I mention that sort of thing to promoters and stuff like that. There's actually been no NDAs signed though. It's just too much work, way too much work. I'm not going to go out of my way to sue someone.
No, of
But
course.
every once in a while, there are some promoters that are like, "Can my friends come in? Can they come into the green room?" And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe if there's a no cell phone rule or something.
Yeah. I feel like as the project keeps going and keeps evolving, when you get to the point where that becomes a real issue, like that'll be a good problem to have,
Yeah, exactly. And I haven't run into any issues like that before, except for the clubs that barely have a green room. Like in New Zealand, it was like a broom storage closet where people would go to smoke weed. So I'm in there changing, and they're all just trying to open the door and get in immediately.
Yeah, of course. What was you mentioned you did like an extensive European tour last year. Any cities stick out in like a surprising way? Not like what was the craziest show, but did anywhere you go, anything happen that you just weren't expecting?
I got to say, one thing that really stuck out to me was playing a headline show in Breda in the Netherlands. It was a smaller show, I think about 150 tickets, but I made a bunch of friends there. I made a lot of friends, people that came in from the UK, people that came in from Germany, and that was incredible. I loved it. Also, Blacklist Festival in Oberhausen, Germany.
Okay.
That's another mention. I'm playing room number 2, and it was just slammed out. They had to stop letting people in. It was an amazing experience.
What's the tour like life balance for you? I mean, obviously, you're very locked into this project right now. Are you trying to stay on the road? Do you take time off and go back? Like, what does the next 6 or 12 months look like for you?
So I'm going to stay on the road pretty much all the way through May. I'm going to take a couple weeks off, probably go to a beach somewhere. I just want to go to the beach and do nothing, like absolutely nothing. And then I have most of June off except for a couple festivals. And then I hit Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand. And just going to stay over there for a while. Probably during my off days in Europe, I'm just going to rent a cottage in like northern Italy, something like that.
Sounds
write
great.
music. Yeah, staying on the road all year. I like the momentum right now, and I just want to keep it up. And especially internationally, now that people are starting to buy in, I really want that to stay. I want to stay in touch with that.
Yeah, is that a thing you noticed on the last tour, that like the project's really starting to get some buzz overseas?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's really caught fire, especially Netherlands, Belgium, Germany. I got to play a few shows in each of those countries. And unfortunately with my routing, I had to go back and forth. So like, my Germany shows were a month apart. My Netherlands shows were a month apart. But that's just how it is. But now that I planted the seed over there, I'm going to go back and water that seed, let it grow a little bit.
That's great. I love hearing that, man. And stateside too, I'm curious your perspective. I mean, you're on tour right now. Do you feel, as somebody who's like a big part of what's happening in the US drum and bass scene, do you feel this like groundswell of energy, this like whatever it is, this renaissance that people are talking about online? Like as somebody who's boots on the ground, does it seem radically different to you than like a year or two ago?
100%. And I don't want to say this in an egotistical way, but we've only had like 2 shows out of the last 20 that didn't sell out. And they're selling out before doors. Like, for example, I'm taking this week off or the next 9 days off, and I'm playing Q Nightclub in Seattle.
Oh, Q's
that sold
great.
out 24 days in advance.
That's great, man.
And it's really happening. People are paying attention. It's pretty incredible. And another testament to it is when the promoter or the owner like picks you up personally from the hotel, they're pretty happy and excited about what's
That's
going
when
on.
you know. That's such a funny. I love that you said that. That's such a funny detail. You're right. That's when you know that you've reached a different level of shows. Is when like the club owner is there.
Yeah. He's like, so nice to meet you.
yeah. He's really good friends with you all of a sudden.
Yeah. Like every 30 minutes, he's asking what you need.
I love that, man. Well, it's cool to see, man. There's a lot of cool drum and bass coming out of the States right now. I think a lot of young people doing it right. Are you part of like any of those conversations? Is there any kind of like group text of up and coming drum and bass, like stateside people? Do you guys have conversations in like a communal way about what's going on?
Yeah. So I might forget a few people right now, but we have a network. Like we talk every single week, actually. Everyone from Justin Hawks, Kumarion, Audio Scribe, Rebel Scum, Bensley, he's in Canada, but North American still. I'm definitely going to forget a few people.
Shout out to Joel Cruz. I know
Joel Cruz.
Joel.
Oh my, yeah, he's on my tour. How could I forget that?
Well, he's forgettable. No, I'm kidding. I love Joel.
I did have a disclaimer in the beginning there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all talk. We're all very much like connected. We send each other memes. We send each other promos.
Oh, shout out to Blossom too. I got to shout out Blossom, man.
Oh, she's amazing.
She rules. I love Blossom.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's an amazing little scene that we're building out here. And actually, my manager is launching a record label for US Drum and Bass pretty soon. It's going to be incredible.
Probably been a while since we've had one of those, like a new drum and bass American label in like a serious vein.
Yeah, there's been a lot of labels that release drum and bass on a regular basis, but not something that's like dedicated to that. And I think he's going to bring a lot of visibility to the scene.
Oh, that's so cool, man. And I mean, yeah, we're seeing now that we're talking, I'm like, I forgot everybody, but the Brownies and Lemonade, like Zed's Dead, collab label that they're doing and collab events. I mean, yeah, there's so much crazy stateside energy for this.
It's exciting. Honestly, like it's hard to tell with you can't see my facial expressions, but I'm smiling, dude.
Yeah, I love it. I was about to make fun of you because you're like, yeah, it's exciting. The least excited sounding. It's excited. No, it's so cool, man. And it's got to feel great to not only have like executed this project the way you want to, and to really be doing it the way you planned on doing it, but then also to kind of hit that sweet spot of it's like preparation and talent, but then also timing and luck. And like, it really does. I don't know if you feel this way, but from an outsider's perspective, it really feels like you're firing on all cylinders and you did it at the right time.
You got it on point right there. For me, it doesn't feel like luck because it was also calculated and it's been a long time coming. I do have to give a lot of credit to my team, especially my manager, Anthony, because he is also a drum and bass enthusiast. And he helped me the whole entire way. Like every idea I had, I bounced off him. Every idea he had, he bounced off me. So we got to collaborate on a lot of different like ways that we approached the process of the project. And now, once the gears are turning, we're just all pedal to the metal. We're just going.
Well, is there anything else we haven't talked about? Anything about what you're doing right now, about Challenger? Anything else you want to get out there before we wrap it up?
Well, so Challenger, like I said earlier, this is just the beginning. I really appreciate everyone that's listening to it. I really encourage everyone to come to the rest of the Challenger tour shows. We've got about maybe 7 left until May. And then I'm sure we'll have some more to announce soon. Also, Challenger merch is about to drop. I don't know when this episode's going to air, but
pretty
get
soon,
it online while it's get it online while it's hot because it's sold out at the Los Angeles sellout show. So make sure to get your hands on some if you're interested. And I just really appreciate everyone for taking the time to learn a little bit about drum and bass. And also, Willy, I'm a fan already, so
Dude, feelings mutual,
really
man.
nice.
Yeah.
It's really nice to be on the show.
I'm glad we did this, man. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Dude, anytime, man. And yeah, have a great rest of the tour. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon, man. Thank you.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Stay in touch.
Absolutely, man. You too. Take care, man.
All right. See ya.
Peace out.